Good morning, everyone, or I guess good afternoon is more appropriate. How are we all doing? Good afternoon. Hey, Stella. Thanks for coming to support my presentation today. So today I am going to be talking about Red Dead Redemption. It is one of my favorite games, as many of you know. There is a story mission in this game that is actually very specific to archaeology. It's even named Archaeology for Beginners. So I'm going to be talking about that. And kind of show you guys some other things that are in this game that are really good to teach the public about what we do and how the media kind of portrays history and that type of thing. So first off, what is Red Dead Redemption 2? It's an action-adventure third-person shooter game. It's set in the American West. It's basically you're playing through your own classic Wild West movie. This story in particular takes place in 1899 and extends into early 1900s. I think the epilogue ends in like 1907. What this game does is it has a very compelling plot and storyline, but it also creates a very unique environment for the players to interact with. So everything is fictional. So you're not dealing in like real historical places or people, but it's all inspired by these things. And one thing that they do address is the issues of race, gender, and the interaction between those underrepresented people in history. And so they do have a very progressive outlook on that in this game. There are random events that take place while you're just wandering around where you can see things happen that are kind of poking fun at the bigotry and racism. There's actually random spawning points for KKK members, and you can actually interact with these people or sit back and just watch what happens. And it is always amusing because they are all idiots. And not to spoil anything, because it has nothing to do with the storyline, so it's not really a spoiler. It's just something that happens in one of these events, that they're trying to do an initiation and do a cross burning, and the new initiate gets to light the cross and ends up lighting himself on fire instead. Another guy goes to try and help him, catches himself on fire, and next thing you know, the entire group of KKK members are all burning alive, and their clan leader is standing there like, oh my god, what just happened? And he's the only one left alive because everybody caught themselves on fire. So it's things like that where it's like they take these historical things and these things that are really out there that still exist today, that existed back then, but they make a mockery of it. Like, it's not just stereotyping the minorities or other groups in the game. It's also looking at the hatefulness and turning that into, this is what these people deserve type of thing. And the most important thing for me personally, and I know this is an important thing for others too, is that you get to pet the dogs and the horses in this game. They do have cats, but you can't really interact with the cats, which, I mean, if anyone knows or has cats, they know that they get attention if they want it, and if you try to give them attention, they're like, I don't want anything to do with you. Okay, so archaeogaming. This is why we're all here. Most of us already know what this is. But how does Red Dead Redemption help us do archaeogaming? Why is Red Dead Redemption worth doing archaeogaming for? So it does provide a historic setting that we can use to showcase what would constitute an archaeological site and how these sites are created. So with Red Dead, we get a really unique opportunity to look at the past in a way. So we are looking at, even though it's fictional, we are looking at a relatively accurate recreation of late 19th century, early 20th century America. And so, we have railroads, we have mining camps, we have old towns, we have the more luxurious cities, and everything in between. And so this allows us to look at these places as they would have existed at that time, but then there's also places within the game that have been clearly abandoned where you can go and look and be like, okay, so this is something we would come across today. This is some of the things that we would look for. It may not necessarily be in this good of condition, but these are things that we would typically find. This game also shows the relationship between archaeology and underrepresented people and the importance of how they play in the historic narrative. So, especially growing up in the United States in history class, and Jake, one of our fellow members on the Discord server, just posted a TikTok that kind of poked fun at our education system and the way they decided to create classes, and one of the subjects was history, is that we sugarcoat our history. We don't talk about the things that make us uncomfortable. We paint all of our, forefathers and all of our explorers as heroes. They're all folk heroes. They're all people that were conquering the West. They were conquering this land that was just pure wilderness and wild, and nobody lived here, which isn't true. That's not true at all. And one thing that I do think that this game does really well is they have a conversation about that. The characters in the game actually talk about how the United States really screwed over a lot of people. And, that's one of the first things that happens in the game. Like, after you finish the first chapter of the game and you're heading on to your next base camp, you're actually traveling along a trail, and one of the characters, will look up, and up on top of the cliffside, you'll actually see a group of people on horseback. Well, the character points out, and as you look up and get a closer look, these are actually a group of Native Americans looking down at you. And the character then comments on, that they really got the short end of the stick. That all of their land was taken, they were forced onto reservations, that the government continues to oppress them, and that, they're lucky to even still be around. And then there's a whole conversation about that with another character who is actually half African American and half Native American. And so he talks about his father, who was a slave, and after he was freed, he went and lived with a tribe and took a Native American woman as his wife. And then you have this character now who is part of the protagonists, which is Arthur Morgan's gang. And so he talks about how, what it was like for him growing up, not just as, an African American, but also as a Native American. Additionally, this game also is good to show what constitutes looting, why it's bad. Well, it doesn't really talk about that, but it gives good examples as to why we can say, okay, this is bad. You shouldn't do this. And it also has examples of repatriation, which I'm going to talk more about. And it also has examples of consultation with descendant communities, which is very important. So this specific mission, it's a key story mission. So it's something that you have to go do in order to complete the main story. But it's much later in the game. It contains spoilers, so I was going to initially play through it, but then decided that it was too far in the game to where there was no way I was going to be able to make it there in time to play it for the con, but also B, I didn't want to spoil anything because there are major spoilers in it. Like, if you haven't played the game before, it gives away a lot of important information. And I know that the game's been out for a while. A lot of people probably already know the story, but if you haven't, I don't want to ruin that for you. Because I do really love this game, and I want people to be able to experience it in the fullest. So that's why I'm not actually going to play the level. But so this mission sends you, Arthur Morgan, to the Wapiti Indian Reservation to talk to their leader, Rains Fall. So earlier on in the story, you have another mission where you actually assist Rainfall's son in conducting a raid on a military encampment. And this has consequences, unfortunately. Much like in real life, in real history, there were the scuffles between the United States military and Native American tribes, and a lot of it was mostly aggression on the military side against tribes that were just trying to keep their way of life. And this story kind of presents the cliche kind of Western story that you would see in a movie. You know, you have as Sarah said in her talk yesterday about Green Hell, that you have, the good natives and the bad natives. So Rains Fall is the good native who wants to keep the peace, wants things to stay peaceful. He doesn't want to fight. He doesn't want to aggravate the military because he wants to protect his people. But then you have his son who wants to fight, who wants to instigate the military because he sees them as a threat, which they are, like, absolutely. And so you have this dynamic that's pretty common in a lot of Westerns where, you got the good guys, the bad guys, and a lot of times it always paints the Native Americans that are fighting the military or fighting against the settlers as being, the antagonists, that they're the bad guys, they're the ones starting the problems, when that's not the case. So when all of this happens, Charles, who is actually the character I spoke of earlier, who is the half African American, half Native American, talks to Arthur and tells him, hey, it's probably a good idea for you to go to talk to Rains Falls and sort this out because things are going to get ugly. So Arthur goes and decides to talk to Rains Falls. And so you show up, and the reservation, it's pretty cliche, stereotype. They got their teepees set up. But one thing that I do have to really commend them for is they didn't stereotype the way they made the Native Americans look in this game. So the bottom picture you can actually see is Arthur talking to Rains Fall, and you can see that Rains Fall has, his hair is longer, it's down, it's not braided, and he is wearing just regular clothing. And in this setting, this is typically what you would see. At this time, when they were being forced onto reservations, they were being forced to assimilate to white culture. And so they were forced to cut their hair, they were forced to start dressing like white people dressed, they weren't able to wear, their traditional garments, and that type of thing. So when you get here, you talk to Rains Falls, and there's a lot of conversation about a lot of different stuff. And he talks to you about the confrontation between the military and his son, and how the consequences of that are now that the military has come, soldiers have assaulted their women, they've burned down camps, they've stolen their objects that they find valuable, and are just creating havoc now on these people that are innocent. They did nothing to deserve this. So this is the site that is actually the central point of this mission. After you talk to Rainsfall, he leads you to this place. He calls it, it's a sacred place that is a point of reflection. It's where he likes to go. It's where other members of the tribe like to go to gain perspective, to get some peace of mind. And he doesn't know that it's been destroyed. So when you get here, he is 100% prepared to show you something that is complete, that is not destroyed, that is in perfect condition, so you two can just have a nice peaceful conversation and reflect on things. Well, you get here and you find that the site has been destroyed. It has been burned down and is currently in this condition. So Rainsfall, of course, is devastated. This is horrific for him. And one point of concern is that when they came and destroyed this site, they also took objects that were important to Rainsfall and important to the tribe. Now, they rely heavily on the sacred object trope, which is fine, but it's also like one of those cliches things where, there's always some type of sacred or magical symbolism to Native American things, and that's not always the case. But what this does represent is how sites that we often look at now in present day could potentially be a similar situation, where you had a site that was occupied by Native Americans, even into the historic period. They lived there, they did things there, and then settlers, military came in, destroyed it. And so this is a good example of looking at that dichotomy of how groups interacted in the past. And one of the things, so for this specific mission, and Arthur has like a spidey sense type thing where you can like, which is actually why the screenshot looks the way it does, is because he's in his like sixth sense mode where you can see clues and stuff. So Rainfalls ask you to look around for these sacred objects. And sorry, I got distracted. I looked at chat for a minute. He asked you to look around. He's hoping that maybe they're still here. So you're looking around, you're investigating, and the yellow things are like spores in the air. That's to indicate that there's something there for you to investigate. The kind of wispy lines are actually animal trails. So like you can activate this vision hunting, clue searching type mechanism when you're hunting animals as well. So you can use this to track the animals better. But so you are investigating the scene now. You are having to do a pedestrian survey. You're looking around to see what remains that will give you more information about what has happened here. What is the story? What is going on? And, you know, Arthur has the benefit of this being a recent thing. This is something that just recently happened. So he's more of playing, you know, detective. He's more of, you know, trying to solve a crime. Whereas if this is something we were dealing with today, we might have even less information than what he has. So as you're investigating, you find that these objects are no longer there. And it becomes very clear that the white people and, you know, military have come in and destroyed the site, that they have come and taken these objects. And so you go to the edge of the cliff and you look down and there's their camp. Your goal now is to sneak down into this camp, try not to get yourself killed, try not to kill anyone else, and find these artifacts and bring them back to Rains Fall. It's a tricky mission. I've watched playthroughs of it where I just have no idea how certain players did not get seen because they were well within vision range of some of the soldiers, but they were able to get in, find the objects, and get back to Rains Fall. So I'm actually going to play you the clip of when he brings the artifacts back. And I apologize if an ad plays, because that may happen, because it's, you know, it's... I don't know why this didn't open. Nope. You worked for me just fine when I tested you. It's not gonna do it now. Okay. We'll do it the old-fashioned way. How about that? Let me make sure that audio's up high enough because it's kind of a low video.
You found it.
Oh, it's gonna play an ad. Sorry, guys. Okay, there we go.
Here. I got your things, I think.
Yes. Thank you.
I'm very sorry about this.
Even sacred things are only things. People, the heart, matter more. Was anyone hurt?
No one was killed.
Well done. Well done. I wish my son knew such restraint. My people owe you a great debt, and I'm giving you very little. But please, take this. We believe it to be sacred.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take those herbs I gave you, please. And most of all, I hope you can find peace within yourself.
So, as you can see, they're presented, these artifacts, as sacred. Even the object that Rainsfall gives to Arthur is considered a sacred object. We consider this sacred. I'm giving it to you as a gift, which, you know, is nice and thoughtful, but it's also playing into that cliche, you know. And the object that he actually gives Arthur ends up being it's an item that actually, if Arthur wears it and utilizes it, it adds special skills type of thing. So let me back out of this and switch screens. So now, I wanted to show you guys. Oh, yes, I see in chat now. Depends on how you define sacred. My question, what do you think about the phrase, even sacred things are only things? Which I found very interesting, because I guess it depends on, like, I don't know. Like, I feel like that, for them to put that in there is not really, like, taking into account how some Native American tribes view things, like how they view the land, how they view nature, how they view animals, plants, how they view themselves, other people, and even how they view objects. So I think that was more of a, you know, let's try to be feel good, that it's just things, you know, that we shouldn't, you know, you shouldn't go around murdering people just because they stole your things type of scenario. Or, you know, it's fine that these military guys came and destroyed this site and stole this from the tribe. You know, they didn't need to get hurt or die. You know, they could have kept the things if it came to that. Which, you know, one thing that Red Dead does, it does really put you in very morally gray areas. And it really does make you question certain things. Like, okay, should they really have put that in there? Should they really have said it that way? Like, did they even really think about how tribes view things? But yeah, I'm gonna go and jump into the game because I know that I'm short on time here. I think I have less than half an hour left, and I have some things that I want to show you. So keep the questions coming. I will try to get to them as I go. And I'm really hoping Anna was with me last night when I was doing this. I really hope that my save files put me where I want to go. Oh, I have Tell 2 technically. Oh, okay. I thought I only had like an hour, so. Alright, well, cool. Sorry, the game takes a little while to load, but like the loading screens are pretty cool. Like they're old school photographs. I do not think that they did, Stella. I highly doubt it. Just because most gaming companies don't, unless they're specifically developing a game geared towards that. Okay, cool. So we're starting off in the first place that I really wanted to go. I believe. Let me double check my map. Okay, yeah. So we're on the outskirts of the reservation right now.
Yep.
So you can already tell here we have, you know, some old dilapidated buildings that have fallen down, cabins that we may or may not find today. At the very least, we would find the foundations. Come on, Pokey. Yes, my horse's name is Pokey. But he's a good boy. So they have, you know, tribal members walking around, doing their thing. You can see some of the decorations that they have hanging up that seem very, you know, cliche of depicting a native camp. You got the feathers, and I'm not sure what that is hanging up there. It looks like garlic. So you see they got their skins laid out.
Hello.
What are you here for?
And they don't like you. Which is valid. You're a random white dude wandering around their camp when they've been put here by random white dudes. And you're not particularly welcome. People don't really want to talk to you or interact with you.
I've had visions the last 3 nights of things to come, and I am worried.
Impossible.
And see, you get things like this, where it's
Anyhow.
like, where you're like, just because they're Native Americans, there's this mysticism and spirituality that is a stereotype, you know, that, oh, we have visions and all of this stuff, and that's a really basic understanding of these people's culture and how they operate.
Yes.
You also cannot use your weapons here. So this is a weapons-free zone, which is actually really good. It's I feel like it's a good prevention on Rockstar's part that, you know, people, oh, I just stepped in horse poop. That, you know, people that play this game to be the bad guy. People do a lot of really messed up stuff in this game, because you can do a lot of really messed up stuff in this game. And I feel like that if this was not a weapons-free zone, you would have some players that would come through and massacre this village. They were just straight up come and kill all of these people. Which tells you a lot about how cultures outside of indigenous cultures, specifically, American culture, and even some, European countries and cultures that have kind of romanticized the American West and romanticized the idea of the Native American, that they come here and would see these as being the villains, bad guys, because through all of our childhood and pop culture and even being taught in school, the Native Americans, they were the bad guys, they were the antagonists, they were the problem children. Oh, hey Matt, thanks for stopping by. Okay, so I'm going to boot up my next load. And what I love about this game is that if early on you go to the location of the site that gets destroyed later on and in the Archaeology for Beginners mission, you can actually find it before it gets destroyed and go and check it out and look at it. Yes, exactly. They would raid the village and they would broadcast it.
There we go.
So, this is the site. This is what it looks like before the soldiers come in and burn it down and destroy it. So you can see they have their structure. You can actually crouch down and go inside of it. And they've really added some pretty nice details of how they bind it, the wood together. But there's not really a whole lot in here to look at. It's just kind of, looking at the detail of the structure itself. And that's about it. And then outside, you have, again, the trees with the feathers stuck to them. And then this kind of interesting thing here, which I'm not sure what its purpose is for, what it's supposed to be. But, to somebody that doesn't know any better, they're like, oh yeah, I could see this totally being what a Native American's camp would look like. Yeah, totally. What are these pole items?
Back to it.
Oh yeah, this is another thing. So this camp is right in the middle of a heavily used trail. So, for an archaeologist, there would be a lot to consider here. Like, what is directly associated with this site? What is just from people passing through? And it's kind of weird and interesting that they decided to put it right in the middle of a trail. But, it's Rockstar, so they're gonna do what they want to do. Down there where the smoke is, that's where the camp is supposed to be. It hasn't spawned yet because nothing's happened yet, obviously. Are those stone fragments napping flakes? I mean, you can't really see well enough to tell, right? So like there's not a whole lot of detail put into what's on the ground. Like if we came across this in the field, you might find the remains of like this campfire. You would probably find the remains of the campfire in there. You might find the post holes for the structure and for these little totem things, if that's even what they are, or if they're just, you know, I don't know. You might find the post holes for those. You may not actually find the remains of it, because it is made out of wood, and it likely wouldn't survive to our time. So there are actually... Oh, autosave. Fine, yes, autosave. Annoying thing. Okay. There are a lot of Native American sites and locations within this game that are all quite questionable. They do have 2 locations that they consider to be... they're literally called in any guide that you look up online as ancient Native American burial grounds, which is just a no-no. One thing I do have to give them some credit for is they didn't, unlike Green Hell, they didn't put up, like, the animal bones and that type of thing. Oh, I loaded the wrong spot. Hang on. Did they just move the gravestones? No, see, I can't speak to anywhere else in the United States, but out here specifically, like, they didn't really bury their dead per se. It, you know, it was kind of... They would put them in little alcoves or outcrops, maybe, if they were in the area. India's so much better. Which, really, I feel like I'm not. Like, they're just... I don't know. This is kind of like my test run, because I agreed to join the symposium panel for the SHA next year, and this is a preview, as it were, of my paper for that conference.
Hey there.
Oh no, am I gonna be attacked by wolves again? Don't be attacked by wolves. Okay. Oh yeah, there he is. No. Yeah, run away. I don't want to kill you. Your friends are all over here. Because they all came and attacked me when I was trying to show Anna stuff. She's now traumatized for life. Can you pet that dog? No, you can't pet the wolves. They, Oh, he's coming for revenge. I'm sorry. Please don't. I don't want to kill you if I don't have to. Okay. So this is just an example of the random things that will happen in this game. You will be randomly attacked by wildlife. You will be randomly attacked by people. And it can be a bit much sometimes.
Go easy, boy. Yeah.
At least they don't scream. That's true.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a bear.
Easy.
You definitely do not want to mess with the bears in this game. Well, I mean, you don't want to mess with them in real life either. But, like, the bears in this game are, like, put the fear of God into you. Like, they will mess you up. Oh. Oh, there's more than one. They're eating the wolves that I killed last night. Okay, well, while they're busy doing that, let's see if I can get over here to this site. Okay. So this is one of these, like, mystery sites that while you're just wandering around, you can come across random stuff like this. So down here, this is probably like the extreme example of how Rockstar decided to represent Native American sites in this game. So you see, we're starting to see the animal bones, and that's a human skull. In fact, that looks like it's a whole skeleton, a mummy, as it were, which is new. We didn't see that last night, so that's fun. And then they have, like, the antlers here. You have the animal skulls, the feathers again, and they have stringed up here feathers that encircle the entire site. You've got to be kidding me. Yeah. Here, again, this is not culturally sensitive. They've taken a shield. They've taken a bow and arrow, and then they have the spears. You can actually, one thing in this game, you can actually go and find arrowheads and projectile points, which is the looting aspect. These actually are not very accurate. Like, at least here in the Great Basin, tribes stopped making points that large into the early, like, post-archaic period, like in proto-historic era. You would have had probably points that size for early archaic into paleo-archaic, because they would have been hunting, you know, especially paleo peoples would have been hunting megafauna. They're ceremonial. And again, here you have a human skull. these are very ornately made arrowheads that are now hanging from the skull. And it looks like they encircle the entire site. Yep, and again here, hanging off of the animal skull. So this actually here, is, I don't want to say accurate, but this is a more realistic type of thing you would find. You wouldn't find these pikes with skulls on them like that. It's just something that wouldn't happen. That's a fantasy pop culture thing to make, you know, indigenous populations look like bad guys. But you would find stuff like this, and out here they can be called intaglios, they can be called earthworks, where they would take rocks to form images. And if any of you guys have the opportunity to go to Fort Mojave on the Arizona-Nevada border, there is actually a really prominent intaglio that is basically two anthropomorphs. It's two people that they outlined on the ground with rocks, and they're pretty cool. Think like the Nazca lines, but not as big. So let's see what Arthur has to say about this, because you can actually inspect this. Yeah, so they are calling this a native burial. So Arthur takes notes like this. Anytime he comes across something weird and interesting, he will write in his journal and draw pictures and do sketches. Now this here, I'm not entirely sure what these are supposed to be. I do like that Arthur takes notes. Right? It does look like scaffolding. Well, I was wondering because, like, these two in the front, they have skins on them, and I wondered if maybe they were, like, raised platforms or something for placing the bodies, but there doesn't appear to be anything on them other than the skins. So maybe they are offerings. Maybe they are little shelter things. Don't really know. And unfortunately, in the real world, if we came across something, which we wouldn't come across anything like this because it's just not real. This isn't how things were really done. But if we were to come across something like this, we would have consultation with the local tribes. We would talk to them and be like, hey, you know, we found this stuff. What is your opinion? If you have one. If you even want to talk to us about anything. Some tribes are more willing to talk to us than others, which is well within their right. And sometimes they just want things to be ignored. And other times they want, things to be preserved. They want things to be learned about and use it not only to educate the public, but also to help educate their tribe. Because a lot of tribes they don't have as much information as they should have about their past, about their heritage, about their ancestors, because we committed genocide against them. And we didn't only, try to destroy them physically, but we destroyed them on a cultural level. We forced them to give up their way of life and assimilate to ours. And the elders that had this knowledge, grew old, died off. The children then are raised within American culture. They no longer have access to their heritage. And sometimes they come across things like this and they're like, I don't know what that is either. It could be this. We'll have to consult some of our elder members. Careful with the... Oh, yes. No, what I mean is that they are still here, okay? So these people are still here. We tried to destroy them, and we failed, which is good. We're very fortunate to still have many of these tribes around. Some of them suffered really horrific stuff. Here personally, we work with the Southern Paiute, and one of the tribes that we work very closely with was almost wiped out by Mormon settlers, and who used biowarfare against them. They actually gave contaminated blankets to the tribal members. These blankets were covered in the smallpox virus, and they intentionally tried to get these people sick. Sorry, I was looking at chat again. Yeah, so that's one thing that people don't understand, is that Native Americans, Indigenous people are still around. They are still important. They're still relevant. They're still fighting for their rights. They're still fighting for their history, for their culture. And when you have things like this that end up in pulp culture, it's continuing this narrative that these are that Native Americans were these bizarre people. They were these, I don't want to use the word because it's inappropriate. And I'm trying to find a better way of saying it, because I'm learning a lot about this, especially, as a white person and doing archaeology. I'm trying to become more cognizant and more aware of my own biases, more aware of how I have been taught things, and realizing that majority of what I know, what I was taught, was wrong. And even in archaeology, you're lucky sometimes if you have, and I feel like it's different now, and it's not like 100% different, but we have more people now, like our community here. We're more aware of how these things affect people, and that we have no right to any of this. This is not our history. This is not our culture. This is not our ancestry. And for some archaeologists, it's really hard to get past that, because we want to study it. We want to know more about it. We want more information. We want to recreate the story that's been lost. But bottom line is, it's not up to us. It's up to them. If that's what they want, then that's great. But we also need to promote having more indigenous archaeologists, promote them having an active say in this, that it shouldn't just be some white archaeologist coming in and be like, okay, this is what this is, and just ignoring what anybody else has to say about it. Any other questions? Because I'm just kind of rambling at this point, and I'm sorry, it's really disgusting out here, so my throat is kind of scratchy, and I'm kind of nasally, because all of the smoke from the fires in California and Utah and Arizona have just moved into the valley, and it's you can actually see the smoke outside. If you go outside, it's just hanging around in the air. There is a lot of other stuff in this game. I was gonna... But what do we do with games like this? Make our own.
Hey,
So,
boy.
yeah. Let me think about that. Because I'm now at, my juice has run out. When it comes to games like this, it's clear that they tried. They gave some thought and effort into how they were looking at minority groups and Native Americans, but it's clear that there is still a level of ignorance. And when it comes to games like this, what we need to do, there's a whole lot happening out here. I don't know if you hear all these animal noises. But so, for us, we can use this as a platform to be like, hey, look, these are the things that they got right. These are the things that are still not okay. We need to take a more active role, I feel, in pursuing both public outreach, but also getting involved in game development. I think that it should be a point of interest for, and it's not just video games, for movies, for any type of pop cultural outlet, comic books, TV shows, that these mediums should be looking to consult with the descendant communities, if that's who they are going to be representing and showing. And if they're going to be depicting things that involve history or archaeology, that they should consult with professionals that know about it, that could tell them, okay, look, we understand you want to keep this fun, you don't want to bog it down with the gray material of it all that the general public finds boring. People want to have fun, they want to have an adventure and that type of thing. You can do that without creating this, without creating these these really insensitive type of aspects. Yes, support the work of indigenous devs. Yes, exactly, Jake. Credit where credit is due to indigenous individuals. So, like, if Rockstar had actually approached a tribe that they were looking at as inspiration for the Wapiti tribe, for example, if they had actually approached a tribe and was like, hey, look, we want to make this game, we want to make sure that we're accurate, we want to make sure that we're being culturally sensitive, what are your thoughts, what are your opinions, and taking that and using that as a foundation. And so then you don't have things like this where, you know, you have a white person's interpretation of what a Native American burial ground looks like, a white person's interpretation of what a Native American site would look like. Because it's rarely going to be anything like this, and certainly nothing with the human remains on display like this. Like, there's cultures that do that, but if you're gonna do that, you need to make sure that you have talked to that culture and that you understand the reasons behind it, and you're not just doing it because, oh, it's cool. This is cool. Let's just put a bunch of skulls on some spikes because, you know, people come across this and be spooked out and creeped. They're like, ooh, this is creepy. Ooh, it's an Indian burial ground. Ooh, there's ghosts. Like, no. There was... don't know what else to show you guys. There's so much in this game. So, like, I could literally do an entire con, probably, on this game. There's side quests for paleontology, there's side quests for geology, there's actually other sites that you can find. Like I explained earlier, I think there's 2 of what they called native burial grounds. There's a couple areas that have rock art that you can find. There's a couple caves that have some interesting things in them. Some of them have cave paintings, some of them have like statues inside of them. Oh, min cons for game franchises, yeah. They also throw in the stuff that frustrates us, but we find amusing. Like, you can actually find a giant Sasquatch skeleton somewhere, which I didn't know about until I was like looking around at a map somebody made of all of the points of interest. And so yeah, you can find Bigfoot's skeleton. They also have a couple points of interest that they've called UFO, and I haven't come across them, but I know that it's going to be terrible. Because they always gotta throw in the ancient alien stuff. Okay, if I need to bow out. Alright, yeah, so I think I will go ahead and call it here. So I can relax a bit before the next panel, because I will be joining Michael and Ahmet for a discussion that will probably cover a lot more of what was already talked about here. So I really appreciate you guys showing up, being here, giving me questions. If anyone else has any more questions, feel free to ask. I will be around. And yeah. No more questions. Let her rest. I'm ready to finish my third playthrough. Yes. I started replaying this game prior to the con, and I do stream it. So if you guys have any interest, you can follow my channel and watch me stream this game in the future. Feel free. Anyway, I hope you guys have a great rest of the day. Enjoy the rest of the con. It's gonna be fantastic. And love you guys. Hope you all have a wonderful day. Bye.